Have you ever thought about finding love again in your 60s? Not marriage necessarily, just someone to laugh with over coffee, to hold hands on a breezy evening walk. But what if the very first conversation with this someone turned into a list of demands? Demands not for love, not for loyalty, but for money control and a photo shoot in Hawaii. This is not fiction. This is a true story from a retired teacher named Michael, age 65, who took a leap of faith after years of loneliness and walked straight into one of the most jaw-dropping dates of his life. And I'm not here just to tell you what happened. I want to help you understand what it means, what it teaches us about trust boundaries, late life relationships, and most importantly, ourselves. So stay with me until the end, because what Michael experienced, it might save you from heartache or worse down the road. And if you find wisdom in stories like this, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for weekly insights crafted specifically for older adults navigating life with dignity, strength, and purpose. Let's begin. The loneliness. We don't talk about Michael Davis, a 65-year-old retired high school math teacher from sunny Florida, had lived a life of quiet responsibility. 3 decades of teaching, a loving marriage, a daughter now grown and living far away in New York. But when his wife passed away, the silence of his home became more than just an absence of sound. It became a void. Like many widowed or divorced seniors, Michael didn't leap into dating. He filled his days with gardening, reading, volunteering at a library. But as the seasons changed, so did something in him. Not desperation, just a longing for companionship, not flashy romance, not whirlwind love, just someone to cook with, someone to ask, "How was your day?" Someone to sit beside when the night felt long. This is something many older adults feel, but few speak aloud. And yet, this very longing can make us vulnerable. That's the quiet truth no one tells you. And it's where Michael's journey began. In the date that looked so promising. When his neighbor Linda suggested a kind retired nurse named Christine just a few blocks away, Michael hesitated. He hadn't dated in decades. He was 65, not 25. What would they even talk about? But with encouragement, he called Christine. They talked briefly. She sounded warm, thoughtful, articulate, so they agreed to meet for coffee. Michael showed up 15 minutes early wearing a crisp white shirt and a blazer he hadn't worn in years. Christine arrived on time, elegant, smiling, seemingly genuine. They sat by the window of a local cafe. She spoke about her years as a nurse, her grown son in Chicago, her love of cooking. Michael shared his teaching days, his daughter, his roses and books. It felt like 2 mature adults easing into something real. But then, everything changed. The condition 1, a financial trial run. Christine leaned in. She appreciated Michael's honesty, she said. But before anything could move forward, she had a few expectations. Michael braced himself. Condition 1, a 6-month trial period of living together. Michael didn't find that too strange, but what came next nearly knocked him out of his chair. Christine wanted Michael to deposit $20,000 into a shared account. She called it a commitment deposit. If things didn't work out, she'd refund part of it prorated by how long they lived together. Michael blinked. Not because he couldn't afford it, but because it turned the relationship into a business deal. Now here's where we pause for some wisdom. Real-life commentary according to Senior Living. Many seniors, especially men, face financial manipulation in late-life dating. And as AARP warns, romantic scams often don't come from strangers. They come from people who seem warm, real, and ready to connect. Michael didn't accuse Christine of scamming him, but her request set off a red flag. Trust he thought shouldn't be bought. Condition 2. The Hawaiian Dream. Funded by him. Christine then spoke of her lifelong dream. A full month in Hawaii, sunset walks, helicopter rides, professional photos. Michael nodded politely. Then came the catch. She expected him to pay for everything. All you have to do is relax and enjoy, she said. Michael felt unsettled, not because Hawaii wasn't beautiful, but because they had just met. He hadn't even finished his cappuccino and she was already booking beach shoots. Psychological insight. According to the National Institute on Aging, healthy senior relationships evolve from shared values, not shared vacations. When someone fast-forwards through the natural stages of getting to know you, especially with financial strings attached, it's often a sign of poor boundaries or transactional thinking. Michael smiled on the outside, but inside his gut said no. Condition 3. Complete control of his finances. Christine's third condition was even more disturbing. If the relationship worked and led to marriage, she expected Michael to hand over his entire retirement income. She would manage it. He would receive a monthly allowance. If he overspent, he'd owe her chores like cleaning or extra cooking. Michael was stunned. "I'm not your student," he thought. He had spent his life earning every penny. And now a woman he barely knew expected him to hand it all over in exchange for a relationship expert commentary. According to Cleveland Clinic, geriatrics financial autonomy is crucial for senior well-being. The loss of control can lead to anxiety, depression, and feelings of helplessness. Michael wasn't just being asked to share, he was being asked to surrender. Condition 4. Separate bedrooms forever. Finally, Christine said they would never share a bedroom. Michael didn't object in principle. He knew many older couples prefer separate beds for sleep quality. But given the other demands, it felt like another wall. Another sign that this wasn't a relationship. It was a series of rules. Reflection. What Michael realized too late. Michael didn't storm out. He didn't yell. He simply looked Christine in the eyes and said, "Thank you for being honest, but I don't think I'm what you're looking for." She nodded, almost unfazed. Michael left the cafe and breathed in the Florida air, sunlight, breeze, freedom. Back home, he poured tea and sat alone. But he didn't feel lonely. He felt relieved. Because this wasn't about Christine. It was about him, his boundaries, his self-respect, his values. Deeper lessons for dating. After 60. Let's pause. Here are 5 truths this story teaches us, backed by research. 1. Emotional maturity doesn't equal compatibility. Just because someone seems confident doesn't mean they're aligned with your values. 2. Financial entanglement early in dating is a red flag. According to NCOA, financial abuse is a growing risk for older adults in romantic relationships. 3. You are not selfish for saying no. Boundaries protect your peace. 4. Trust your gut. If something feels off, it usually is. Seniors often override their instincts to be nice. Don't. 5. Solitude is better than surrender. As Michael realized, being alone in peace is better than being with someone who doesn't truly see you. Real stories from the community. I've heard from dozens of seniors over the years. One woman told me, "I met a man on a dating site who seemed lovely, until he asked to borrow $5,000 just until his pension came through. I said no and never heard from him again. Another gentleman shared I moved in with a woman after 2 months. She took over my accounts, my calendar, and even my diet. I lost myself completely. Getting out was the hardest part, but I finally did. You see, Michael's story isn't rare, it's just that most people don't talk about it. But we should, because awareness saves lives and dignity. So if you're watching this, maybe you're recently widowed, or maybe you've been alone for years. Maybe you're thinking about giving love one more try. That's beautiful. But please go in with eyes open, not fearfully, but wisely. You deserve kindness. You deserve to be known, not managed, and you should never have to prove your worth with a checkbook or surrender your identity for the sake of being chosen. Love after 60 can be sweet, strong, and deeply fulfilling, but only if it's built on mutual trust, emotional safety, and gentle pacing. Let Michael's story remind you, sometimes the best relationship is the one you walk away from. Michael's emotional landscape, behind the calm face. What many people don't realize, especially those outside the senior community, is that emotions after 60 aren't dulled by age. If anything, they're more complex. Michael didn't just feel disappointed that the date didn't work out. He felt something deeper, a mix of betrayal, though Christine hadn't wronged him in a legal sense, mixed with a subtle mourning. Not mourning her, mourning the possibility. He had hoped this coffee meeting might spark something warm, something safe, a conversation that turned into companionship, but instead he walked away feeling that dating, even at his age, had become transactional. The romantic interview had been replaced by contractual terms. It wasn't about soul connection, it was about what he could offer, and that he realized was not the life he wanted. The rise of transactional love in senior dating. Unfortunately, Michael's experience isn't isolated. According to a 2024 report from the National Council on Aging, financial vulnerability in romantic relationships has sharply increased, especially in adults over 60. Why? Because more seniors are dating again than ever before, and many have retirement savings, home equity, or pensions. To some, that looks like opportunity. To others, it's a target. There's a growing trend that psychologists refer to as transactional intimacy. This is where one person uses emotional closeness as leverage for money, housing status, or control. And it's more common than we think. AARP surveys show that nearly 1 in 5 seniors report having been financially pressured or emotionally manipulated in a relationship after 60. It's subtle. It can happen even with people who mean well, and it's why stories like Michael's are so important. Real-world example: the widower and the widow's agreement. Let me tell you about Leonard and Dolores. Leonard was 72. A widower, Dolores was 68. Twice divorced. They met through a senior hiking club. At first, things were simple shared hikes, potlucks, book swaps. Then Dolores suggested moving in together to save money, she said. Leonard agreed, but within a month, Dolores had convinced him to add her to the deed of his house. She said it would prove he was serious. 3 months later, the relationship soured. Leonard wanted her to move out. She refused. Legally, she now owned half his home. It took Leonard 2 years and over $30,000 in legal fees to resolve it. This is the dark side of rushed intimacy and blurred boundaries. And it starts just like Michael's story with what feels like innocent connection. Sabo. What healthy relationships after 60 really look like. So what should dating after 60 feel like? According to the Mayo Clinic's Healthy Aging Division, Healthy late-life relationships share these traits. Pacing. There's no rush. You get to know each other slowly. Emotional transparency. You can speak your truth and it's received with kindness. No pressure for financial or physical commitment early on. Mutual support, not dependency. Flexibility. A willingness to adapt, to bend, to grow together. Kindness over control. Michael's instincts told him something was off, and that ability to listen to the quiet voice inside is one of the most important emotional skills a senior can develop. Because at this age, protecting your peace matters more than people-pleasing. Kyle, what Michael could have done differently and why he didn't need to. Some might ask, why didn't Michael just walk out the moment she mentioned $25,000? But if you've lived long enough, you know, it's not always that simple. Michael was raised to be polite, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to not cause a scene. Many seniors, especially those from Michael's generation, were taught to endure discomfort to avoid being rude. But here's what I want you to know. There is nothing rude about protecting your boundaries. There is nothing impolite about saying that doesn't feel right to me. Christine was not wrong for having preferences, but Michael was not wrong for walking away. They simply wanted two very different things, and recognizing that mismatch early, that's wisdom. Ikaw on the illusion of urgency in senior relationships. Christine's list of demands reflected something deeper: urgency. She wanted to move fast, move in, transfer money, book a trip, define control. But true companionship doesn't demand speed. AARP reminds us that relationships forged under urgency often conceal deeper emotional patterns. Fear of abandonment, desire for control, emotional reactivity, or even, sadly, financial manipulation. So if someone tries to rush your heart, that's your cue to slow things down. Take a breath, ask questions, sleep on it. Real love waits. The power of saying no, especially after 60. There's a quiet superpower that not enough seniors talk about. The power to say no without guilt. No, I'm not comfortable with that. No, I won't hand over my finances. No, I'm not ready to commit after one coffee. No, I'd rather spend my time with someone who values my presence, not my pension. Michael's decision to walk away was an act of courage. He didn't argue. He didn't accuse. He simply said, I'm not the right fit. And then he walked back into his life alone, yes, but with his dignity intact. And for men over 60, special considerations. Senior men face unique emotional pressures: the fear of being alone, the desire to feel needed, the belief that their worth comes from what they provide. But relationships are not transactions. You are not an ATM. You are not a retirement plan. You are not a home or a cruise fund. You are a human being with stories, wisdom, and a right to be loved for who you are, not what you offer. Let Michael's experience remind you, you don't need to buy belonging. You only need to walk with integrity and trust that the right person will see your value without needing a deposit. The quiet strength of solitude. In the weeks after that strange date, Michael didn't rush back into dating. He spent more time in his garden. He started mentoring students online. He called his daughter more often. He read books that made him laugh out loud. He even joined a gentleman's walking group at his community center. Michael learned something that too many people forget. Solitude isn't punishment. It's restoration. When you can enjoy your own company, the pressure to settle for less vanishes. And that peace. That's what makes you magnetic to the kind of love that honors you. Building a legacy of wise love. Let's end with this. If you're in your 60s, 70s, or even 80s and you're hoping to find love again, start with love for yourself. Don't compromise your peace just to avoid being alone. Don't ignore red flags because you're afraid this is your last chance. Don't hand over your heart or your bank account to someone who hasn't earned your trust. You've lived too long, fought too hard, survived too much to trade your values for validation. Instead, become the kind of person you'd want to grow old with: gentle, grounded, joyful, wise. The right people will recognize that, and they'll stay not because you offered them money or control, but because they feel safe with you, just as you should feel with them. If Michael's story helped you reflect, if you saw something in his journey that mirrors your own, please hit that like button. Share this video with a friend, a parent, or someone re-entering the dating world after 60. And if you want more real stories, expert insights, and practical wisdom for living well as an older adult, subscribe to our channel. You're not just getting content, you're joining a community of wise, experienced, and courageous people, just like you. Stay strong, stay kind, and never be afraid to walk away from what doesn't honor your worth.